be out of here by 9, so we're going to do a quick Q&A as quick as possible. We're going to say a couple things, take some questions from the audience, and then we will be outside to answer any questions. We want to meet as many people as we can. So please stick around if you have any questions that you weren't able to ask. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you so much.
When is this going to be visible?
It's online right now. It's on GazaFightsForFreedom.com. You can rent and buy it there. We're having DVDs printed in the next week or two.
Okay.
So right now it is behind a small paywall while we're on the screening tour. Of course, the production costs were absolutely enormous for this. The majority of the money went to journalists in Gaza. So we're trying to recoup those costs now, and you guys are all a huge part of that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, just everyone got a little flyer that has ways they can support the film. I mean, as Abby said, this is 100% donor funded. We raised about half the funds we needed to make the film. And so it was a huge undertaking to be able to show you the type of content that you saw. You know, we paid Hollywood wages to our colleagues in Gaza instead of paying Gaza wages. And in addition, other things like the archive historical footage you saw, all that black and white footage, like that stuff is all owned by big news corporations like Reuters. Cost $50 a second to license that footage to show in the film. So that is kind of why we're trying to recoup the cost through the different ways to make support.
Okay, great. I'm going to open up the discussion period. Again, we only have about 15-20 minutes, so if you have any comments or questions, please try and keep them short. I'd like to open up the discussion period first with a question for Abby and a question for Mike, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So my first question is for Abby, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the film came together.
Sure. So Mike and I have been banned from Gaza. We were in the West Bank in 2016, which of course is another humanitarian crisis. 50 years of legal military occupation, brutal martial law. As you saw, what Gaza used to be is the West Bank today. So it was pretty shocking and appalling, the dehumanization going on there. So we tried to get into Gaza. Of course, these atrocities are being sponsored with 10 million US tax dollars every single day. But I was banned outright by the Israeli government. I was called a propagandist, not a journalist, and I was also called an Iranian agent. I was used to being called a Russian agent. Yeah, I thought I was a Russian agent, but I didn't realize that I was an Iranian agent. So I mean, it was scary though, because when you're called an Iranian agent within 48, that's a scary thing. So long story short, I Skyped in with a session after the Great March of Return sparked off. I saw how atrocious the US media was covering it, even though this is a completely non-violent, tens of thousands of people going there in a non-violent civil disobedience action. The media covered it the exact same way as they do everything that happens there. The passive voice Palestinians died, right? Who killed them? They're getting murdered. They're not just dropping dead, right? The clashes erupted. No, people are getting massacred en masse. So I Skyped in with this session with Gaza journalists, and we talked about how the Western media was covering it. They were very, very taken aback, and they said, can you do an episode of the Empire Files on this subject? We said, of course. They loved our work on the Empire Files before covering this issue. So we directed all the interviews. We worked with our collaborators on the ground. Once we saw the footage, we were so blown away by it. We knew that we had to really take a year off, make the film that you just saw tonight, and really do this story justice, because certainly no other media was. Thank you. And two other quick things. If you saw our co-producer, we had to redact his name. He lives in Gaza, and he was scared to attach his name to the film, because he said if Israeli officials found out that he was involved this intimately, he would never be able to leave. Those were his words. So it really shows you what's at stake here. He deserves the accolades to be here tonight with us, and he cannot leave. And he is scared of retaliation from the Israeli state. And that is serious. Another really important aspect is that we actually sent the film to Sabrine, the hero of the film, Razan's wonderful mother. After Razan was murdered in cold blood, and we saw what the IDF dared to do, right? Instead of apologizing, instead of atoning for this barbaric act, they actually had the audacity to smear her and call her a human shield that gave up her life for Hamas. So after that, of course Sabrine would not have wanted this story to be told and her daughter to be smeared in this way. And it wasn't just the IDF, it was the New York Times actually, because as you saw, the New York Times did a story on her a week before she died. After she died, the New York Times went back into this true crime investigation where they interviewed Rasha, they interviewed Rami, they interviewed Sabrine for about 30 seconds. The rest of the series on Razan was actually told by an IDF general that was explaining why she died, right? So of course Sabrine just said, I don't even want the interview. I mean, at that point she didn't trust anyone, especially Western journalists. And so we made a pact with her that we would show her the film and she would approve everything before we released anything. And that's why it focused so much on Razan, of course, to just give homage to her life and a tribute to who she was because of how egregiously atrocious the media covered her case. So that's how it came together.
Thank you so much, Abby. My next question is for Mike. Mike, could you please talk a little bit about why you chose to structure the film the way that you did?
Sure. First and foremost, we wanted to produce a piece of journalism. We didn't set out at the outset to produce a film that's just like a beautiful film to watch and then you're won over to get some sympathies for a particular thing. We wanted to produce an actual piece of journalism that investigated what happened at the march and provide a clear-cut case for what the reality is, that Israel should be tried for war crimes and the siege should be lifted on Gaza. And we wanted to be able to arm people with that information because we're both activists. There's a reason why we're doing this tour with the Answer Coalition, with the PSL, with many other Palestine solidarity organizations, activists, anti-war groups, socialist groups all around the country, because we want this film to not just be, there's lots of films about Gaza, and they just make people feel sad about Gaza, right? But as Razan's mother said in the end, we don't want sympathy, we want our rights. And so we wanted to produce something that could be used by every single one of you to have a completely clear-cut case of what the facts are, to be able to take it into your own movements, your own communities, your workplaces, to be able to build solidarity around this issue, because that's, of course, how apartheid in South Africa fell. That's how the freedom for Palestine is going to be won, is through everyone in this room taking this information and turning it into some kind of action. And that's part of how we structured it. The reason we focused on the United Nations report in 2018 so much, of course, the international community is limited. The UN is limited. It says a lot of bad things. It does a lot of bad things. It falls short in many ways. It's limited in its capacity of what it can do. But even within the confines of international law, even within their very limited structure, what the Palestinians are doing are 100% legal and protected. What Israel's doing is 100% illegal and reprehensible, and they should be held accountable for it. And so we focus on that for everyone to be like, whoever you're talking to, you can't argue. We don't make the rules. The law is the law. And no matter if you say even if there is a militant behind a child shooting at you, you still can't shoot that child legally, especially if there's no real person behind them. So that's how we structured it around issues of international law. But in terms of how the flow of the film went, I think the major instinct would be to have the climax of the film, of the march, be at the end. But we wanted to put that in the middle because we wanted to start by zooming in on an individual personal story. What the beginning to end of the day is like for the average person in Gaza. And then zoom out and cover the issues broadly, right? Cover all of those statistics. It's important to know the number of people killed, the number of people paralyzed, all of these kind of broad facts that are important for the piece of journalism, important for you to arm yourself with, but then to focus in on one particular person again at the end and tell a very detailed story of just how one of those people died. And the way we focused on Razan, any of the 183 people killed in 2018, we could have picked any one of them. And we could have shown you the same exact thing. And so it's important to speak in terms of broad numbers when it comes to these issues, but to not lose sight that every single one of those numbers is someone with a story and a family, just like Razan.
Thank you. Okay, we will now open up to the audience for questions, and we'll try and get to as many people as possible. I see a hand here.
Let's take a cluster and then we can answer all the four.
Okay. So a hand here, and there.
You spoke of like format with DVDs. You're going to be doing that, and as far as promotion goes, you're going to be going like Rogan and stuff like that. And how does everyone in this room make everyone see it, essentially?
Sure. Well, I was on Joe Rogan before it came
Correct.
out, so he's done a great deal, and he's been smeared relentlessly as well. The Israeli lobby has made a huge coordinated campaign to try to diminish what happened on his show. But you have to give him a lot of credit. He lets me come on there and talk about this for as long as I can. And he's right. So.
It's coming out on DVD and Blu-ray soon. It's on GazaFightsForFreedom.com. You can rent it and download it now.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question? Because we can't hear the question.
The question was, is it going to be on DVD? And are you going to
The
go on
question was,
Blu-ray?
how do we show it to everybody? How do we get it out there too?
And we
It's
have
got to
some-
get in Sean Penn's hands.
We have clips on YouTube that you can promote
Yeah.
right now. So we have the history section. We have a small section to help facilitate spreading that.
I just want to say, since we have a lot of questions, I'll be trying to use the stacking method. So just raise your hand and I'll write down a descriptor and try and go in order that way. So we'll go here and then this person in the back right there. Please project.
Yeah. I'm looking at this film, and I think I saw this back in the early 30s and mid 40s. It was called, as you said, Nazi Germany. These were the very people that are now taking these people and treating them just the way they were treated. And I look at this and I don't understand what they see that is right here. I mean, there is no real right on their side. And I look at this and I say, what's the Israeli end game? To me, all I see is that they want to eliminate every Palestinian and just take over the West Bank and say, because aren't they already starting to, annex more of the West Bank, from what I heard today?
On a daily basis.
Yeah, and then you hear Barry Weiss saying,
It's all planned.
it's all planned,
Yeah.
and if they kill a few people, and Bill Maher says,
Yeah.
Zionism.
Yeah, sick. We'll take that.
Yeah, I'll
as
take a couple more and then we'll
solution.
sponge all of them at once.
Abby, I think in the end you said that the solution was it the International Criminal Court that you mentioned, or I was very shocked about how many Israeli people supported this open fire system. But the solution was to go to court. Would you tell us a little more about that, and how far along is that? Is there any progress there?
Sure.
And the individual in the front.
My question is, why does the West have such a difficult time grappling with this conflict? Why do they side with Israel so much?
Because we have an Israeli
yeah. My question was, obviously at this point in your career, having done so much work surrounding the Palestinian cause, I'm sure that the Israeli lobby has constantly attacked you. But in the process of making this film and after releasing it, was there something new? Was there certain obstacles that they tried to place in the way of this film being created and being released? That was either more dramatic than any assaults on your integrity before, or maybe something like new that you never thought they were possible, like that they were never really capable of doing, even though I'm sure they're capable of doing a lot.
Of course.
Yeah, and they killed journalists a lot. So, yeah, I mean, long story short is, in America they just smear you and marginalize and censor you. So, I've been smeared as a propagandist, I've been smeared as a Russian agent, I've been smeared as a conspiracy theorist and an anti-Semite. And so that's the way that they kind of censor your voice here in the U.S. And I feel like they think that they don't really need to do anything else if they can really get that pounded in the heads of people, whether it be on Wikipedia or whatnot, or on corporate media, which I've been relentlessly smeared. So I think that they think that that's enough. And yeah, I mean, it's really imperative for us to do grassroots sharing of the message and promotion to amplify the voices of the Palestinians who were in this film ourselves. So thank you so much for that. And as far as the courts, so that obviously Israel needs to be brought before international courts in the same way that South Africa was brought before courts when apartheid fell. The thing is, we're not going to get there until we mobilize a massive boycott, divestment, sanctions movement and build that international pressure to humiliate anyone who steps foot in Israel, whether it be musicians, academics, activists. They need to understand that this is not going to stand and that you can't call yourself a progressive if you support what's going on. And so once we make that clear, then the movement's going to happen. In America, just to give some people some positivity, in the last 10 years, polls have drastically dropped in terms of support for Israel. This is happening right now. You can look at the Meteor Festival in Tel Aviv. Artists were dropping like flies because of the mounting pressure against them. This is about an information war. We know how much Israel controls the narrative. They have tens of millions of dollars in Hasbro operations going on to do everything that they can. They are not winning anymore. People are being able to see with their own eyes what the reality is with social media. You go online, 10-1 pro-Palestine comments, and that's with the Hasbro operation in full swing. So we are winning. You can look at the British trade unionists that just passed unanimously a bill for BDS. You can look at Ireland, who just passed a unanimous BDS bill. We'll be outside more to discuss this. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate your support.